Paul Carter is wrong. I'm just kidding. Paul Carter isn't necessarily wrong. I just use that title because that's what people tend to click on. But I do disagree with him. So recently I was having a discussion with him on Instagram. If you don't know who Paul Carter is, his account is Run Lift Bang on Instagram. It's a great account. He provides a lot of good information. He's got workout programs. I agree with 99% of what he says, except for this. Okay, there was one video where he compared a slower lifting tempo versus a faster lifting tempo. And he indicated that noobs or newer trainees believe that a slower lifting cadence is better, and advanced trainees believe kind of a quicker tempo is better. But it's not true when it comes to muscle growth, okay? So there's a little bit of discussion between, you know, what's better for muscle growth, what's better for strength. Okay, so in the beginning, I was merely referring to muscle growth. A faster lifting tempo is not better for muscle growth, okay? As long as effort is controlled between the two. A lot of people are under the impression that if you're doing a slower concentric or slower eccentric, you are using significantly less weight, but you're not. If you were using significantly less weight, for instance, if you could biceps curl 60 pounds, but you were biceps curling 20 or 30 pounds and going very, very slow, yes, that would be less effective. But the thing is, while you do have to somewhat reduce the amount of load you're using when you slow down your repetition cadence in your upper and lower turnarounds or changes in direction, it's not significant, okay? So people are under the impression if you do a slower rep cadence, I'm not even recommending super slow. I don't even do super slow, okay? A lot of people are under the impression that slow repetition cadence means super slow. Personally, I don't even like it. I think it's boring as shit, okay? But a slower, more controlled rep cadence in most cases will require a slight reduction in the load that you're used to using, okay? Because external momentum is not helping the weight move through space. That's pretty much what momentum is. So you will need to reduce the weight slightly, but you do not need to use a light weight for a slow, more controlled repetition cadence. Basically what you need to do is just change direction more slowly, okay? And this is where I think the confusion comes in. I think a lot of people are under the impression that these slow repetition cadences use very, very light weight. In which case, practically speaking, if somebody used a very, very light weight in a super long set duration, the fatigue mechanisms probably will interrupt their ability to reach optimum motor unit recruitment. Okay, I think that's what Paul was thinking I was implying, which it's not, because I don't think anybody should use a light weight for a very long set duration either. I've seen it practically not be as effective. What I do recommend people do, however, is instead of bouncing at the bottom and the top, change direction slowly, okay? This will reduce chance of injury and result in the exact same muscle growth as if you did something like this, okay? Rather, something like this, okay? If an individual believes that changing direction slowly versus changing direction more abruptly is worse for muscle growth, it's asinine, because the change in direction is an indication, fast versus slow, of the input of momentum. And obviously, if momentum is reduced, the muscle has to put in more effort. But if sets are done, or exercises are done with a high degree of effort, whether you bounce or change direction quickly at the bottom or do it very slowly, motor unit recruitment is going to be the same, okay? So we began to discuss, he referred to research that shows heavier weight results in more motor unit recruitment than lightweight, in an attempt to disprove changing direction slowly. My response was, I didn't say use lightweight. I simply said change direction slowly. You do not need to use a lightweight to change direction slowly. You just need to change direction slowly and not bounce, okay? Simple. And it's been well documented by Bruce Lowe, Dave Smith, Ken Hutchins, James Fisher, James Steele, that momentum-driven, fast changes in direction will likely transfer external forces to the connective tissue and increase chance of injury. I don't see what the argument against that is. You know, I mean, Drew Bay loves to use an example, you know, go out in the parking lot and attempt to lift a car. Okay, if you don't follow Drew Bay, go to Drew Bay's High Intensity Training on YouTube and at Drew Bay on Instagram, colleague of mine. And we're gonna get together and do a video and talk about this stuff next week. But here's the example he uses, which I think summarizes it pretty well. Go into a parking lot and attempt to lift a car. Now what you can do is, first of all, you're not going to be able to lift the car, but there's two ways you can do it. You can ease into it and then ease out of it, producing the same level of motor unit recruitment, or you can jerk into it. Which one do you think is more dangerous? This is common sense. Obviously, momentum jerking into it is going to be more dangerous, okay? They're both going to result, if you are contracting as hard as you can, if you ease into that high effort contraction versus you jump into that high effort contraction, they're both going to result in the highest level of motor unit recruitment you are capable of. So it comes down to, if the set is taken to a point where effort is extremely high, you are getting optimal or damn near optimal motor unit recruitment. You do not have to have huge amounts of effort right at the beginning of the set to end up with the highest level of motor unit recruitment, okay? You just need to experience extremely high effort somewhere in the set, preferably at the end, approaching muscle failure. While it's true, you will get that stimulus more efficiently by experiencing high levels of effort and high motor recruitment early in the set by going really heavy, whatever. It is just safer to use a slightly more moderate load, not a light load, a more moderate load, and over the course of the set duration, eventually reach a point where you're experiencing high levels of effort rather than right off the bat. There's no evidence to my knowledge, and I've read a ton of this shit. I know Paul's been in the game for a long time, maybe longer than I have. But dude, I've read a lot of shit too, okay? It's not just you. I mean, and I've practically applied this, literally, in my gyms over 25,000 times. I've tried all kinds of rep tempos, all kinds of cadences, all kinds of load, frequencies, volume. I've literally practically tried it, tracked it, recorded it, observed it, measured it in person. It's a pretty long study if you ask me. And there's no evidence to my knowledge that shows if sets are taken to failure, heavier weight versus lighter weight is more effective for muscle growth. In fact, there's a plethora of evidence to the contrary. Dr. Brian Schoenfeld came out with a paper a couple of years ago showing the effective rep range between 5 and 30 to all result in similar hypertrophy, meaning heavy versus lightweight makes no difference if you're taking it to failure, okay? Lighter, I'm not saying light, okay? Sets need to be taken to failure. So I really don't understand where Paul Carter is getting this from. You know, I tried to have a discussion with him on Instagram. It seems he gets really easily offended, really easily, you know, he gets emotional really quickly. So I was just like, you know, dude, fuck it. You know, I'm not even gonna bother. Whatever. I was just trying to have a discussion with you. You're getting pissed off, swearing, whatever. Forget it. But you guys, you gotta challenge other fitness professionals. People challenge me all the time. I don't get pissy and mad over it. I just explain to them why it may or may not be correct. So another aspect of, you know, what we were talking about was I was saying fast changes in direction are dangerous on the connective tissues, which they are in the weight room. Now, Paul correctly indicated that if you want optimum tendon stiffness, and a lot of this is documented by Dr. Keith Barr, did a lot of research on tendon stiffness, toughness, strength, etc., found that abrupt loading of the musculotendinous unit will improve tendon stiffness and the tendon's ability to transmit force. Correct. Meaning, if you want more force, explosiveness, you want to load the tendons abruptly. Correct, Paul. Correct. But the average Joe doesn't care how much about producing optimal force through his tendons. The average Joe wants to get stronger, more muscular, and they want to do it safely. Okay? So to recommend this abrupt loading in the sets for an average Joe is silly. For a power lifter, true. For an Olympic lifter, true. For a strongman, true. But I would reckon most of Paul's following, most of my following are not these individuals, so why are we recommending this to them? Okay? Yes, if your goal is optimal performance in weightlifting or moving weight, you're probably going to want to load the tendon abruptly. For average Joe, it's stupid because it increases injury risk. With training for a sport, you assume the risk of injury. You assume things you're going to be doing to train for that sport or participate in that sport may be dangerous. When you're training for exercise, your goal is to improve physical capacity without the expense of reducing physical capacity in process, meaning do it safely. Okay? So he's correct. Loading the tendons abruptly is going to increase their stiffness and ability to produce force, but it doesn't apply to your following. They don't care. They just want to build muscle. Okay? Now, if you're an athlete and you obviously will want to, as an athlete, improve tendon stiffness, its ability to transmit force for, more explosiveness, documented by Dr. Keith Barr, but you don't need to do it in the weight room. The abrupt loading while doing your sport, say if you play football, the starting and stopping and changing in direction, in the hitting, and the avoid being hit, all those things are abruptly loading your tendon, increasing the tendon stiffness, as recommended by Dr. Keith Barr. You do not need to stimulate the tendon in the weight room with heavy loads at the expense of increased risks of injury, because all that abrupt loading on the field is going to increase your risk of injury anyway. Why would you carry that into the weight room? The function of the weight room should not be, for athletes, to increase tendon stiffness, because they're getting that on the field. The goal should be to increase muscular strength, which you cannot do on the field, right? So that's where I disagree. Personally, I think I'm coming from an extremely logical perspective. I don't really see where any holes in my argument are. If there are holes in my argument, comment. No, let me know. But to wrap up, I've seen no evidence that, and I've seen more evidence to contradict heavier versus slightly more moderate, lighter loads result in more hypertrophy when sets are taken to failure. They don't. I've seen a lot of evidence that lifting weight quickly and explosively increases chance of injury, as documented by Bruce Lowen-Smith in 2007. In the I'll put the link in the description. So for the average Joe, if you are not concerned with producing as much force as possible, because you're not a professional athlete, you're not a power lifter, you're not an Olympic lifter, then it would behoove you as a normal person to change direction slowly. This does not mean use extremely light weight and go at a snail's pace. I mean, you can do that if you want. You will get stronger. You probably won't optimize muscle growth and optimize strength, but you'll get stronger. You want to change direction slowly. You want to avoid bouncing and all that kind of silly, sloppy nonsense in order to protect your joints in the pursuit of improving physical capacity. Because if you get strong and muscular and you tear your biceps or tear your triceps or tear your pec, what use was all that work? Because now you can't even use the muscle that you worked hard on improving the aesthetics of, that you worked hard on making stronger. All right? So that was my disagreement with Paul Carter. You can follow him on Instagram. It's Lift Run Bang 1, I believe. Good channel. Good content. I just personally think he's completely wrong about this. And I respectfully disagree. I'm not trying to get in a pissing match with anybody. I disagree. Okay? Go ahead, hit the like, subscribe, and the bell notification icon so you can be notified when I post more videos about the real science of exercise. You can get in the best shape of your life, the most safe approach, spending very little time in the gym.